Hello, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to each and every one of you. A very good evening to people joining from India, and good morning to all our guests joining from USA and other parts of the world. I hope you all are safe and have either taken your vaccine shots or gonna have it soon. Thank you so much for joining us today on this fascinating journey of a revolution in diagnostics of fertility. I am Siddharth Daftari, representing Team ADVI. ADVI Chemical, headquartered in Mumbai, was founded in 1989 and now being spearheaded by Mr. Sid Daftari. ADVI falls under the umbrella of Mr. Bharat Daftari group of companies. And as you are all aware, how based on innovation, Mr. Bharat Daftari built Bharat Serums and Vaccines and introduced products like Roclon, which was world's first monoclonal anti-D, with similar vision of Mr. Sid Daftari to introduce novel and breakthrough technologies in the field of in vitro diagnostics. ADVI launched Actimprom and Partus in 2018, and then the HPV PCR kits for the cervical cancer. Proud to say that ADVI is the only company in India which is focusing on diagnostics in women health and fertility. As we know, it all starts with the seed of an idea, and in this case, it's a sperm. With the aim of introducing an innovative technology in the field of male fertility, ADVI has collaborated with a very unique company, Bondray Bio, to introduce the world's smallest and fully automated US FDA approved Semen Quality Analyzer Lensoak X1 Pro. The world is fast evolving with artificial intelligence at the forefront in changing the way we live. The pandemic that hit the world a year ago, crippling the lives of both individuals as well as organizations, has created a high technology adoption across the globe, with Indian organizations leading such upgrades. You would be pleased to know that, according to the survey done by PwC, India leads in artificial intelligence adoption during COVID-19. In this virtual conference room, we are going to have a fantastic topic for the discussion. In our today's session, our moderator, Dr. Sunil Jindal, would highlight on artificial intelligence in the field of assisted reproductive technology. And our key speakers, Dr. Ashok Agarwal and Dr. Rupin Shah, both eminent and renowned doctors in the field of andrology and reproductive medicine, would be highlighting the importance of artificial intelligence in andrology, and that is specifically in semen analysis. We believe artificial intelligence in the field of semen analysis would help reliable diagnosis in male fertility. We hope you would enjoy hearing our speakers and some valuable takeaways from them. I will introduce my colleague, Mrs. Santoshi Kadam, who heads the marketing for ADVI. Over to Santoshi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Siddharth. Good evening to all. I welcome everybody, and especially all the speakers and everybody who has joined this Saturday evening. I am Santoshi Kadam. I am representing the marketing of ADVI. So today I'm greatly honored to have eminent and top doctors who are specialists in reproductive and andrology segment. And with great pleasure, I would like to introduce our moderator for the session. So Dr. Sunil Jindal is going to be the moderator for this session, and I'm sure everybody is knowing Dr. Sunil Jindal, who is a specialist in reproductive medicine and andrology. So allow me to just share the CV of Dr. Jindal. Yes. So Dr. Sunil Jindal is the scientific director of Dr. Madhu Jindal Memorial Test Tube Baby Center, Meerut. He is the vice chairperson of the Delhi SR and Delhi IAG. He is a recipient of the gold medal of the best postgraduate MAMC New Delhi. He has received around 35 awards from different organizations, collaborations with multiple institutions for research, especially into from American Center of Reproductive Medicine as well. He is the national and international offline and online master trainer and he has a lot of first times into his particular kitty. He has he has done the first micro TSC baby of North India. Genetic male giving birth to twins was something he has done for the first time into his region. Giving a baby to the tallest lady of Asia. The child is now 6 feet 9 inches at the age of just 13 years. So that's a great achievement. Heterotropic cornual pregnancy, giving birth to healthy twins. And apart from this, having given birth to over 6,500 babies by different procedures in the last 18 years. So Dr. Sunil Jindal he has published, and he has given chapters in 8 textbooks on fertility, and he has over 200 national and international presentations. So we welcome Dr. Sunil Jindal and hope the session is going to be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Santoshiji. It has been such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for your kind introduction. Today, I really feel privileged to be here to listen to two of the most eminent people whom I have known personally. One is the researcher whom I admire, and the other person is a clinician and a surgeon who everybody admires, and my goodness, what a person he is. Artificial intelligence, something which we're here to talk about, touches our life every day. And if we look at the circle of assisted reproductive technology and we put the dots together, I would think about in 1992, when I was a registrar in surgery in Maulana Azad Medical College. I still remember we had a professor, Professor Kaza, whom I was assisting. After having looked for a sperm for about 2.5 hours, he found a sperm. He picked out the sperm under a microscope. He was ecstatic. And he said, I can never forget, I have got the sperm, but what to do with this sperm? Then came ICSI 2004. When we started, we knew where the sperm had to be placed and started doing that work. But the way this work is growing today, there is one realization the other day which came to us, that artificial intelligence is going to be the way forward, like it is for a lot of places. So I'd like to share my screen, please. And I would like to share. This was in the World War II that Alan Turing, who built the first computer in the world, which got hold of the telegram messages of the Germans, whose code used to be changed every hour, he said, I propose to consider the question, can a machine think? And it's very interesting that it started in the World War II, and today in Google Translate, in Google Assist, anything you ask comes to you through artificial intelligence. Siri is completely neural language transmission and training. Facebook, you wonder in Facebook that what you are thinking of comes over because you have typed it once. And the Amazon, of course, shows you whatever you want to buy. And this is because of the reason of the massive data which they have. Now, do you know how much of data does Google have? Google has 10 to 15 exabytes of data. And if you consider a computer to have about 500 GB of data, this is equivalent to 300 million personal computers. Now, this is the amount of data which they have and into which they have put in artificial intelligence, which I'll be talking to you about very simply. And because of this data being there and this being used with deep learning and machine learning, they have come to an area where so many things they predict and they find. Now, artificial intelligence, if we look at it and try to understand it, very simply, you could say it's a technique which enables machine to mimic human behavior. Now, it has a subset, which is machine learning, which is a part of artificial intelligence techniques. It uses some mathematical and calculative methods to enable machines to bring out and improve this experience. While deep learning is another layer of machine learning where computations take place at multiple layers of a neural network. Now they have made neural network because I'll just explain you further the way very simply you'll understand it. So in medicine, the patient data which is there with us will go through a training input of a learning algorithm. Now this algorithm which is being created by the machine, it analyzes the data. And once it has analyzed the data, which is of course the knowledge and data which you have fed into it, it comes out with an output which is utilizable. But the interesting thing is, just understand that if there is a learning algorithm for data, and there is another algorithm which is placed in it, which relearns and makes the learning better for that data. So automatically, whatever data is coming to analyze in this particular algorithm, by the next algorithm will even become better. So the first algorithm will become better by the deep learning algorithm. Now, let us just try to understand about the human brain. So the human brain has a visual cortex, and in this visual cortex, we analyze the motion, form, signals, the color and forms at particular areas, and all these things through zillions of neurons develop something in our brain which is known as an image. If you look at a picture, in the picture you find a lot of pixels. So if this is the ear of a deer, this would be in the form of pixels. So this pixels is basically data. Now this data of any visual object would be analyzed, and this data would be fed in to tell us what this data shows us. For example, I don't know if you've used on your smartphone Google Lens. So what happens is anything you point it at, it takes a picture, tells you what it is, and tells you similar forms which are available. In fact, it takes you into a new world altogether based on a single picture. Google Translate, I mean, it's developed completely on artificial intelligence. And Google Translate actually from the unimaginable data gets you to an area that the moment you take a picture, it changes it into the other language which you want. And this magic is because of artificial intelligence. Now, let's understand one small thing, that as far as the picture or the visual image is concerned, you put in an input data, you go through an algorithm, it gives a particular meaning. The meaning which this algorithm gives to that picture, it is put through some neural networks, and this neural network brings in complete learning and improvement. For example, if there is a sperm, so a picture of this sperm, the type of sperm, the morphology of the sperm, the tail of the sperm, from the data which has been put into it, will analyze, the computer would analyze, and then the neural network would go in to enhance the experience continuously. But this would depend on the initial data which has been put in. So the most important thing is the quality and the amount of data which is available. Now, the brain has zillions of zillions of neurons, and these neurons are connected to each other. And if we look at a neuron has dendrites, an axon, and the terminal axon. So there is an input and there is an output. Similarly, over here, you have the data which is put in X1, X2, X3. This is processed, and there is an answer which comes out in artificial intelligence. Now, what happens is that these zillions of neurons have synapses in the brain. So one neuron gets connected to the other. the other gets connected to the other, they get interconnected. Everything is processed for the output. Similarly, over here, you have synapses going on in the algorithms, and the input leads to synapses, processing, and ultimately the output. This is the reason what happens is that supposing you need to convert something written in Spanish into English, and you put in the camera in Google Translate, all the data and pictures which are there are put into this process, and within seconds, you get the answer. It is all through artificial intelligence. So if you ask me, artificial intelligence is something which in the future is going to enhance humanity. If we look into the development of the human spirit, in the last, from wherever human beings were there, millions of years, the Industrial Revolution, which took place about 2 decades ago, brought in the steam engine and electricity, which changed the world. Then in the 1990s, everybody had a computer which has grown to the massive power today that the M1 processor is the smallest, non-heating, and the craziest processor available, which is so powerful, which we could never think. And now in the future is going to be artificial intelligence, which is going to drive the future in every field, including medicine. Garry Kasparov was defeated by IBM, and the computer defeated him. So it was considered that the biggest champion of chess and the human brain can be defeated by a computer. But chess is actually calculation. So doing calculations is not intelligence. So, well, IBM must have produced a computer which could calculate better than the human brain, but that was not on intuition. There is a game known as Go, especially played in Korea. And this game is based on intuition and calculation. So the AlphaGo project of Google created, based on artificial intelligence, a system which defeated the South Korean champion of Go. And this was based on intuition, not calculation. And this is the beauty into which it went into a system where the computer could actually think and go into an intuition by the basis of artificial intelligence. So now if we go into ART with this basis, we need to get into 2 specific areas which changed everything. 1990, where we had PGS, and 1992, when ICSI came up. So these 2 revolutions created an absolute change in the way IVF was looked at and at the results. So a large subset of people who could never have children before were able to get children because of these 2 technologies, and both were learnable. But the interesting thing is that in the future, at the moment, artificial intelligence will bring us into an area which is going to change the future, because it's going to bring in massive data in the future and bring it to us based on a predictive value, which is going to predict a lot of things. So at the moment, let's go into this. So a lot of big data, which comes from electronic medical records, hospital data, cloud sharing, goes into the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and natural language processing, which I had spoken about. And this further on will go into reproductive medicine, and 2 areas are going to combine together: research and experiment and clinical practice. And this is the reason we have Dr. Ashok Agarwal and Rupin Shah over here, the doyens of research and experiment and clinical practice in andrology, both together to bring out the facts to you. Now, what happens over here? This particular research is going to be used and is being used at the moment in sperm cell classification, oocyte selection, embryo selection, and this would lead to the cost effectiveness of any assessment, any clinical decision making, and an outcome prediction. So if there is a patient who comes to you and says, what are my chances of being successful in IVF? And you put in all the data over there, it analyzes the data and brings out and tells this is the prediction if we do this. What a magic is going to be for a patient who wants to go in through IVF, which is an emotionally and financially turmoil for a lot of people. And for them to know that this is what the prediction is, can be magical for them. So at the moment, the applications are in evaluation and selection of oocytes, in sperm selection and semen analysis, in embryo selection, and in the prediction of IVF outcome. But let's understand, it's not, at the moment, there are a lot of challenges and it's a limited place. Now, the state-of-the-art algorithms which are used for deep learning are still in their initial stages and they need to be researched further. Currently, the AI research focuses mainly on image analysis of the sperm cells and embryos to predict an outcome. But machine learning can handle simple repetitive tasks at the moment, saving doctors a lot of time, but ultimately it cannot be followed blindly. These models would only be successful when clinical work and experiences goes hand in hand with the AI research. Well, the questions which could be answered in the further future by a machine is, what are the chances of success of IVF? Doctor? What is the optimal yield of mature oocytes? Will this patient have OHSS early or late? What is the oocyte image analysis telling me about the oocytes and the prediction into a pregnancy and a good embryo? What is the semen analysis telling us in terms of the sperms and the morphology, which is at times very difficult to manage in so many laboratories across and getting it standardized? What is the embryo viability from what the picture looks like? What could be the uterine receptivity based on the input which we feed in? How would this laboratory perform based on the data which we get from the laboratory? And why is this patient dropping out? And why this patient will not drop out is something which AI probably would tell us in the future. So the future directions are brilliant and they would be brilliant. And it won't be about 20, 30 years from now that the way medicine is practiced would probably be very different, especially ART. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And now, of course, I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Ashok Agarwal. And he needs no introduction, really, if you ask me, because everybody knows Dr. Ashok. Can I have the slide, please? So Dr. Ashok is somebody whom I have known closely in the last couple of years. He's a brilliant researcher and more than that, a brilliant teacher. And recently he's had a series where about 1,400 to 2,000 people pan-world have been taught by his center and his team in Andrology. And what an amazing course it has been. So he's the head of Andrology Center at Cleveland Foundation and for the last 28 years. And he's the director of American Center of Reproductive Medicine, a professor of urology at Lerner College of Medicine at Case Western University. He's the staff of urology and at OBGY, pathology, immunology at Cleveland Clinic. From 1984 to 1992, he was an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School. He's the recipient of, well, I do not know whether I should say this, the equivalent of a Nobel Prize of embryology as an IVF expert of 2019 by the American College of Embryology for his contributions to human reproductive embryology. Ranked in Scopus as #1 author for infertility, andrology, and human-assisted reproduction. My goodness, he has about 800 peer-reviewed publications, 36,622 citation scores, and high index of 103. He's currently an editor to 42 medical textbooks and manuals, 12 special journals on male infertility, ART, fertility preservation, DNA damage, and antioxidants. Dr. Agarwal's laboratory has trained over 1,000 scientists, clinicians, graduates, undergraduate students from United States, more than 55 countries. But let me tell you, this 1,000 is going to, in this year, increase to about 2,500 because of the program which is running. Dr. Ashok, privileged to have you here. And over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Sunil. It has been an honor and a privilege to join. I want to thank the sponsors, Advi Chemical, Siddharth and Santoshi for organizing this program. Want to thank moderator Dr. Sunil Jindal for a outstanding introduction to artificial intelligence, which was really an eye-opener for me itself. I mean, I was looking forward to having somebody teach me, too lazy to learn about the things myself, and it seems like overwhelming, where everyone is talking in a language which we don't understand so easily, so you kind of get scared. And I want to thank the next speaker, Dr. Rupin Shah, who's a doyen and a stalwart in the field of andrology and a role model for urologists and andrologists all over the world. So it has been a great privilege. So I'm going to begin my presentation without taking too much time here. So let me see if I can share the screen. Is it okay for me to go ahead? Okay, so my mandate today is quite defined. Sunil provided an overview of what artificial intelligence is, how it works, and its emergence in the area of reproductive medicine and ART. So we have a broad idea about this particular topic, which is all around us, as he explained. Either you are using a smartphone and are using Siri or Amazon, where we have Alexa. Actually, we have Alexa here at home, very much a device which you can ask any question, and it will tell you in a very beautiful voice. If you say, well, play Indian classical music, I want to hear that, she will play that music right away. If you say, well, I'm really bored, I want you to play a joke, can you tell me a joke? She will tell you a joke. And if you get tired and angry, you say, shut up now. So she'll say, sorry, now I'm not going to talk. So it is amazing how the technology has developed. It seems like a really a great toy at some time. I mean, when we got it like 5-6 years ago, it was just something that we didn't know whether we'll be using it. Now you can get all kinds of statistics. Who's the prime minister here? What is the population of this? You know, so all the things, just whatever comes into your mouth and in your mind, you can just get it. Like, you know, when you were really like a kid, you will ask your mom or grandmother, you know, what is this? How will I touch this? What is the distance to the moon? Or, you know, how many stars are there? So now we have an anima right there in a small little box, which listens to you and tells you right then and there. So I think this is an amazing development. But let's talk about what is happening in the field of andrology. Well, that's what we will be talking. So before we go into AI, I just wanted to tell you that the problem of infertility is a worldwide problem. It is not a problem of United States, not a problem of India or Indian subcontinent or Africa. It is a worldwide problem. From the statistics that we have published, almost close to 200 million couples all over the world are suffering with the disease of infertility. We call it a disease because it is not a choice. It is a problem that people have, and it can be treated successfully. And male factor, surprisingly, people used to think that male factor doesn't exist, that it is all the woman's problem. And you know, we keep on marrying more women, and sometimes it will hit and we'll get another a child. So that is really how things used to be. But in modern days, we know that male factor is responsible in almost 50% of the cases. At least 20 to 30% are pure male factor, and then there are male and female factor, which can lead up to almost 50%. So that's a huge number. It's kind of equal responsibility. And the rise in male infertility is due to a large number of reasons. We all know about decline in semen quality. Everyone is talking and sounding alarms. There is advanced older paternal age. People are waiting for 30, 40, 45 year, 50 year. I mean, it's not unusual even in United States to see people, men waiting until 35, 40, 45, and it's nobody's raising their eyebrows. Same thing on the woman. 35, 38 is okay. I mean, it's not a big deal, but that does have an impact on the reproduction. And we know that as especially the age really impacts on the reproduction, very well defined in the woman, but also in men. Number of studies have shown that as men go up to the ages of 35, 40, and 45, all the characteristics of their reproductive capacity start declining. And that does impact on the fertility and then the chances of getting a child. High rates of sexually transmitted diseases in many parts of the world, environmental causes, phthalates, bisphenol in everything that we smell, everything that we breathe in our kitchen is containing phthalates. You touch anything, it has phthalates. And they are really dangerous. I mean, if you look at the studies, you will see that they have been described to be having all kinds of toxic effects on our health. Lifestyle factors. I mean, this is a pandemic. You cannot go anywhere. You're stuck at home. And so sedentary lifestyle is just the way the thing is right now. But even before the pandemic, people were not really very mobile. I think with the age of television and the serial and the various kinds of shows that are coming in the evening, nobody is going anywhere. Nobody is talking. Nobody wants anybody to come home. And that is the way that society has changed, whether it is in United States or in India. I mean, in United States, if somebody comes up at your door without calling or taking an appointment or telling that I want to come and take your permission, people will not even open the door. They'll say, "Who is this crazy guy? Why is he coming here? I mean, I don't want that person. I have a life, and I don't want people to come just walk over to my home and start pressing the bell." I mean, that is considered quite acceptable, that you don't have to let somebody come in, but this is how it is. Of course, we have the use of cell phone, which is pretty much like became our third arm. I mean, without the cell phone, people start feeling nervous. It's just like you don't have the coffee. The first thing that they want after they get up from the bed is to hold the phone, as if the phone is gone, then your life is gone. So the phone is really, I think, the most precious part of your body. The stress, oh, it is horrible with the pandemic. Oh, alcohol use going up, it's great. I mean, I think all these single malt, I mean, it's just evaporating. Even, I must admit, I mean, all the bottles are gone. I was asking Sunil if he can ship some of them. So smoking, unhealthy diet, all of these things, really, I think, terrible. Diabetes, these are the modern diseases all over the world, very harmful. Erectile dysfunction. So these are some of the things that we have. And all of that has led to decreases in semen count. And this is a study. And there are almost virtually hundreds of studies, some showing some effect, some showing no effect. But the general consensus is that there is a significant decline in semen quality, and in different parts of the world. It is not just in one local area within the world, but studies which have been conducted in all different parts of the world have shown tremendous decline over the last 50, 60 years. As much as 50, 60, 70% decline in count, motility, morphology, all the important parameters of male gamete and the fertility of men. And I was just looking at this article. I just wanted to share this. This is an article that was published today in the newspaper called Guardian. And the title is Plummeting Sperm Count, Shrinking Penises, Toxic Chemical Threaten Humanity by Erin Brockovich. I just looked up Erin Brockovich. She is a celebrated author, a activist, environmental activist, and one of her stories back in 2000 was the subject of a movie with Julia Roberts. The movie name was Erin Brockovich. And, you know, interestingly, just yesterday, I received a request from one of the reporter asking me to comment on this story which came out. And I, with all the things going on, I didn't even think too much. I get a lot of requests, just like many of you. But when I was searching today, just scanning through the news, I saw this. I said, "My God, so this is real," and it is amazing. And she's an environmentalist, and she's saying the same thing that I was showing. That there is a 60% decline since 1973, and the chemicals to blame for this are found in everything from plastic containers and food wrapping to waterproof clothes and fragrances, in cleaning product to soaps and shampoos to electronics and carpeting. So this is these chemicals are called PFASs, or the forever chemicals, because they don't break down in the environment or the human body. They just accumulate, accumulate, accumulate. So this is the price of modernity. Evaluation of male infertility is pretty much well standardized because of the guidelines from many of professional societies in the field of reproductive medicine, either from the AUA, which is the American Urological Association, or EAU, or European Society, European and Urology Association, EUA, or the ASRM, which is the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, or ASHRI. All of them have come up with a standardized way for evaluating fertility, whether it is infertility, whether female or male. This is a flow diagram for the male to take the reproductive history, which is where you can find out about their exposure to various things that I was referring to, about their age and infection and environmental exposure. Then do a physical exam investigation, and all of these things require a male infertility specialist, a trained specialist who can do the proper exam, and then as a way of investigation, testing for semen, and do simple semen analysis, and then a more advanced test as needed, blood test, hormone test, and then ultrasound. So this is really requires a full investigation and a referral to a specialist. So let's talk about semen analysis. Why should we talk about semen analysis? Well, semen analysis is the most important and the very first test that is ordered on a male patient or in a couple where the partner needs to be examined. So after the reproductive history and physical examination, the physician or Dr. Rupin or Sunil will say, let's have a semen analysis, Mr. X, and let's see how it looks. So semen analysis is basically a very the first test which will tell about the fertility of the man. It will tell by a variety of parameters that it can be investigated, and it's pretty much a very kind of a simple routine test where we are looking at the volume, the pH, etc., and the count, motility, morphology. So this is our laboratory in Cleveland Clinic, where we conduct these tests routinely. We are a specialized referral lab and one of the largest labs in the United States. So while most of you will consider and agree that semen analysis is the most important test, should be done, and it is an assumption that it's a simple test, but I would tell you that it is absolutely wrong. It is not a simple test. It is a highly complex test because it is a subjective test. When there is a decision to be made by an individual as to how many sperm are there, how they look, whether they are motile, whether they're normal, abnormal, there are multiple decisions. People are going to make their own decision. Different type of results will come in. And to really remove these subjective type of decision making, the World Health Organization has published a large number of guidelines or manuals called WHO Laboratory Manual for the Examination of semen sample. The first one came in 1980, almost 50 years ago, and since then we have almost 5 editions that have come out: 1987, 92, 99, 2010, which is the 5th edition currently used. I just received a draft of the 6th edition, which is under public review, and you can see it if you search for it in the internet, that they just sent an email for a public comment, and it is supposed to be introduced either end of this year or something, but very soon. So the 5th edition is the one which is from 2010, almost 10-year-old, dictates how the laboratories or the clinics which is engaged in the examination of human semen in a diagnostic manner should follow the protocol. The problem is it's highly subjective, difficult to standardize. It is almost impossible to standardize until unless you know how to do it. In the United States, the andrology laboratories are highly regulated, unlike the IVF. They are considered, the test is considered a high complexity test by CLIA, by the government. And there are bodies or agencies which will come and inspect your lab, check each and everything, and make sure that the test is being done correctly. There are very stringent requirements. We are actually preparing our lab for the inspection. I've done almost 28 inspections, but every inspection is a challenge. We have 3 labs, and it's like year-round inspection for one or other. And there are 4 different bodies or 4 different governing agencies which inspect different parts of our lab. And it's a huge amount of work. It's a great thing for us to keep on our toes. Usually performed by large clinical lab, require quality control, quality assurance, proficiency testing, or external quality assurance, and very strict personal requirement for qualification and training. So the uncertainty that can come in because of the subjective nature of semen analysis is due to a variety of reasons. We know that sperm production is very much a feature of the testis, and it can be produced in very small quantities, or it can be large. So it is a rhythmic production. It is not a constant number of sperm that are coming out from the testis and then into the ejaculate. Because of that, the same sample or the same individual, if it is examined, could be subnormal or may have 15 or 20 million at some time, and after a few months or a year, the same individual could have 80 or 100 million sperm. So because of that, there is a great deal of inbuilt variability which creates a problem. And then there is a lack of a standardization for protocol, training, quality assurance in the andrology lab. There is a controversy over changing the WHO guidelines, although the WHO has published a large number of these guidelines over the years. But the laboratories, many of the laboratories are not aware or not using the correct 5th edition. They are still using the 3rd edition. I go out and inspect the lab, or they're using the 4th edition. And they say, well, this is what we are going to use. So it is, again, I think enforcement of these things are difficult. So education is the way to really bring these things into the practice. And there is a large number of problem because of the person who's doing the test. It can have a large variability when the same individual and examines the same samples multiple times. It can give multiple results. And also, if 3 or 4 technologists are working and doing the test, they may get different results. So who to believe? And it all leads to a great deal of uncertainty in semen analysis. And it is, if you're looking at the count, there's a different counting chamber, there is all kind of problems. And in the morphology, when there are so many different classification, staining system, this results in increased error in clinical decision making. Patient who can have perhaps a sperm count which may be normal or just borderline may come out to be severely abnormal, and because of that may require a very invasive or very costly ART procedure rather than going for IUI. So there are many different conditions, or after the surgery such as varicocelectomy, if the semen analysis results are not correct, that can give erroneous findings in terms of the management of those patients. Rather than giving them the chance to have a natural conception, they may be subjected to ART, unnecessarily causing extensive financial headache on them. So what is the problem with the semen analysis, with the manual semen analysis? The manual semen analysis is really what we call is a test which is coming out from the ages of bullock cart. So basically we are using something which is very difficult to standardize. It has so many steps. If you look at it right here in the diagram, there are 9 steps for conducting a manual semen analysis. And this can take almost 15 to 20 minutes for persons who are conducting these tests on a day-to-day basis. But that is not enough. Morphology is another animal. And that sometimes you can get lost because there are so many types of problem with the morphology, with the low sperm count, a very high sperm count, and or viscous sample. Making the smear cannot be so easy, or staining may not be done correctly. So that really is a long process. The morphology takes almost close to, it takes 12 steps, so almost 1 hour to do the morphology. So it takes a lot of time. And the end product is a lot of mistakes and a lot of errors. So more steps means more possibility to fall down and make mistakes. To overcome that, the industry had developed over the last 30, 40 years a variety of systems called computer-assisted semen analysis system. And you can see the images of many of the popular systems here, which are being used. And many of these, actually all of them are being used also by us in Cleveland Clinic. Microptic SCA, Hamilton Thorne, IVOS, and MES, Medical Electronic System, SQA Vision. And these are very good modern CASA system. I mean, the ones that started back in 1980s were really ancient. So the technology has changed, and these systems have become really, really advanced. But they are really subjected to a variety of factors which can impact on the results that they produce. They have sample preparation things which require well mixing, number of frames acquired per second needed, depend on the sperm trajectory, depth and type of sperm counting chamber, low and high sperm count where the results may not be accurate in there. And when the sperm are agglutinating, that can also interfere, or if there are cell debris. So the results of these computer assisted, these are semi-automated devices which require a human operator, a person who has to be very skilled to use these devices. Nobody just can walk through the park and say, I want to sit here and do the CASA analysis. That just does not happen. There is a learning curve. You need to learn how to use this. It's like driving a Mercedes. So here, what are the advantages? Of course, nobody is going to buy these things until there are advantages of using these. They are very useful in busy andrology labs where we have high volume of semen analysis, as it improves the efficiency in andrology lab. And also it reduces the inter and intra-operator variability as seen with manual semen analysis. They are semi-automated, objective, and can be used in large scale testing. So there are definitely advantages, and that was one of the reasons that we had been using these systems for almost 20, 30 years, ever since I've been at the Cleveland Clinic, and even before at Harvard. So what is the limitations? Well, they are bulky. Man, these are large, huge. and they are not the easiest devices, and require trained personnel to operate. Uh, Again, variation in inter-operator results are possible, and require it takes time to generate the report. It's not like in 2 minutes or 5 minutes you can get the result. And the most biggest problem is they are expensive. You cannot find a system which is affordable for majority of the clinics and laboratories. So if you look at the survey of the clinics which are using these, you'll find those clinics are at the higher end of the income bracket. But for 80 to 70% of the clinics, these type of system become very difficult proposition to afford, just because the price sensitivity. So you have heard about artificial intelligence from Sunil. I mean, I don't think there is much I can add. I learned a lot, and I think he covered pretty much all the important aspects. So I will just move forward. And I will also move this slide because he explained it in a much nicer way about artificial intelligence. He talked about machine learning, which is a database learning. Create the database to train the machine, or machine is like a computer. It's not like a machine like the movie Matrix, where they are coming and going to attack us. And then the deep learning, how to improve the system or the database as it accumulates, so the results can become more and more accurate, more and more precise. The predictive power becomes stronger. So how does it work for semen analysis? Where we're inputting the results of semen analysis into the computer, and providing to the computer the classification, whether it is normospermic, oligospermic, or asthenozospermic. And machine is learning whether the results are correct or not correct. And this is the process of training the machine or training the computer how to really identify based on the data that are being entered into the system. And that's what Sunil said very rightly, that the amount and the quality of data that is inputted is extremely important. If you have maybe 100 patients that you're entering the results for semen analysis or for embryo or whatever is your choice, then the quality of the results that will come out from AI are going to be really poor. They are no better than what you can predict perhaps on your own. So if you, instead of 100, 200, if you add maybe 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000 data points or data from the patients, the predictive power just increases dramatically. And then the deep learning, as was explained by Sunil, is a continuous improvement, which the algorithm from the machine is doing to really improve its predictive power. And this is the part which really is going to drive further improvement in the experience with artificial improvement, because the machine learning is still something which is not going to give very high level of predictability. But as the amount of and the quality of data that is being inputted improves, so will be the output that it can predict, and that is how it will work. So in terms of the semen analyzer, we are talking about a particular new device which was introduced 3 or 4 years in the market, approved by the US FDA, and is commercially available in many parts of the world. It is called LensHook X1 Pro Semen Analyzer. It works on artificial intelligence, optical microscopic based technology. So it's a technology which uses artificial intelligence, and it evaluates semen parameter based on WHO 5th edition. It uses a learning algorithm to avoid subjectivity or reduces the subjectivity in evaluating semen parameters. So the goal is for the use of this technology in this particular device is to really remove the subjectivity which is inherent in a manual assessment of any procedure, and certainly semen analysis, which is done millions of times every day all over the world. So this is a really a great application, a great time for a device to attack on a problem that we see worldwide, and we are going to learn what is really this machine can do. So this is a broad overview. The machine, which is the name of the device, called Lenshook X1 Pro, it is just a 3-step, and it takes only 2 to 5 minutes to get all the test results. You have the pH from the same sample, concentration, motility, morphology. And the measurement range for pH is between 6 to 8. For concentration is between 100,000 sperm to 300 million sperm. Total motility, progressive motility, non-progressive sperm, as according to the WHO, anywhere between less than 1% to all the way 100%. So entire number of sperm can be counted. Morphology, normal sperm form by strict criteria, less than 1 to 100%. So we will see a very small video, I believe, next, and I will ask the company, because my video is probably not working very well, for them to show this video. So I will stop here and let them show you a 10-second or 20-second video. So the way that I don't know whether there is audio here, but you load in a cassette about 40 microliter of semen 2 drops, one for the pH and one for all the semen parameters, and then insert it inside the device, and it will start examining the semen sample and provide you the results in about 4 to 5 minutes total. So you get all the results of pH, concentration, morphology, progressive motility, total motility, and non-progressive, and all these results are saved. And pretty much you can download in a PDF file right away. Okay, you can stop sharing. I can start. So the reason that I'm talking about this device is because we were the first center here in the United States and all over the world which conducted a clinical trial on this particular device, so in Cleveland Clinic. So we have been associated with the actual clinical investigation, trying to validate the results that the company says that they have found. So this was the first study that we published, automation of human semen analysis using a novel artificial intelligence optical microscopic technology. It was more like a pilot study, and then more recently we have published a full-fledged study which we will discuss as well. So in the study that we have just conducted, we have 110 semen samples. They were examined both ways, manual semen analysis and using a commercial CASA device. We used Hamilton Thorne CASA as well as Lenshook. So there were 3 different analyses done on the same sample, and by WHO, looking at all the semen parameters. And these are the results. I mean, if you look at the correlation between MSA's manual semen analysis and then Lenshook device as well as Hamilton Thorne. So we have a sample size of 101 samples, which were oligospermic, stenozoospermic, normospermic from both patient and donor, and they were examined by 3 different ways. And if you look at the graphs on the right side, you will see very high degree of correlation for concentration. And this is between the manual device and the Lenshook. This is really extremely good. If you look at the all the dots, they're right there. And if you look at the top row in the table, you will see for concentration, we have 0.97, so almost 97% of correlation for motility, 93% correlation, and for progressive motility, 92%. Furthermore, the Lenshook also correlated very well with the industry leader, which is Hamilton Thorne, which is the bottom row, the third row, and you can see it was able to really kind of stand alone against a very large and very powerful machine called Hamilton Thorne, which has been in the market for almost 20, 30 years. So then we wanted to look at the intra-observer agreement. And you will say, what is intra-observer? Why should I care? Intra-observer is for the same individual. Let's say if we have Sunil, who is going to be doing a sperm retrieval on a non-obstructive azoospermic patient, and he's going into the test, is doing the microsurgery. And if he has to go and do the procedure on the same patient 3 times, is he going to be able to find similar type? I mean, that's not a good example, but if the same person is going to do a same procedure multiple times, is there a reproducibility in their results, or it is a hit or miss? So here we are talking about a diagnostic test, which is semen analysis. So we wanted to test if the person who's performing the test by themselves accurate, or they are going all over the place. So we had a very well-trained individual who performed this, where they looked at the manual semen analysis and then did the semen analysis against the Lenshook. They took 3 different readings, so a total of 30 readings to check all the parameters. And again, we have the results here. You can see on the right side where the table is. And what it shows is that the results of intra-observer correlation is very high. There is very little in terms of the differences. If you look at the Lenshook, which is the bottom row, in terms of the intra-observer, which is the 3 readings taken by the same individual, it shows almost 100%, 99% degree of correlation or accuracy for concentration, motility, and morphology, all above 90%, which is very good. Then we wanted to look at the inter-observer agreement, which is again a major problem because of the variability between the different individuals. So if you have an army of people, like 10 people doing semen analysis, you have a busy lab where you have patients after patients coming in. And how do we know that Mr. X, Mr. Y, or Mr. Z really are providing similar type of results, or they are, all different results that are being produced? So that can be a big problem. So we need to control that. And this was the design, which is a common design to test these type of devices, is to look at 10 samples and 3 operators. So we had 3 individuals who conducted this testing at the same time by both manual and Lenshook, and looking at the semen parameter. And these are the results. Again, if you look at the Lenshook, we have extremely good results for concentration, for motility, and for progressive motility. Actually, these results are now published. So I mean, on the bottom you will see unpublished, but the results were just published about a month ago. So I will share the results. Well, the device also has a quality control, which is an important part of any kind of diagnostic test. It has a quality control for the hardware, which you can see, which the laboratories can do. It has a quality control for the software, which is just a key that you can insert, and the result should provide exactly the same results every time. And then a quality control for the operation that has to be done, and it has a low level and a high level, and the result should, when the operator does the test, should provide pretty precise results as you are printed on the device, on the bottles or on the vials. So those results are already available in front of you. The expectation is that your results should be the same every time so this is something that you have to do before you start testing on your patients on any given day. So let's look at the performance characteristic, which is a very important part of any kind of test: sensitivity, specificity, positive predictive value, and negative predictive value for concentration, motility, progressive, and all these parameters between manual and X1 Pro. So for all these parameters for concentration, the sensitivity is 100%, specificity 100%, positive predictive value 100%, negative predictive value close to 97%, accuracy 100%. And you can see pretty much all the values here. And the second row is the cutoff value according to the WHO 5th edition. And then are the performance characteristics, sensitivity, specificity, PPV, NPV, and the accuracy. And the results look pretty good. Morphology, which we will discuss next, is also performing, especially if the morphological forms are showing mostly normal in the sample. Then the negative predictive value is pretty good, almost 98%. However, if there are abnormal samples, abnormal sperm forms, then the results need to be checked manually. And I will explain the reason why the device is not able to identify the abnormal sperm form correctly at this time. So the recommendation for using the LensHook X1 Pro, as I said, for samples which are fertile, which is greater than 4% by strict criteria, you can use the results that the device provides, which is just at the time of semen sample. It provides the concentration, motility, morphology, all the values on an unstained droplet of the sperm sample. No staining, no nothing is required. Within 4 minutes, you get it. If it is more than 4% by strict criteria, then we have seen that the negative predictive value is very high. However, we have not been able to test a large number of infertile men as of now, which the testing is going on right now. And because of that, whenever there are less than 4%, then a manual review is essential. So what is the difference between X1 Pro and other CASA? Well, I mean, there are some differences, and important one. I think what I said earlier, both of them uses algorithm. They both use some form of artificial intelligence. But in the regular CASA, which is the computer-assisted semen analyzers, there is a need to have an operator select the fields or check the things and then make many decisions. And certainly in samples with low and high sperm count, there are dilutions and problems you have to do in low sperm count by yourself manually because the results are not accurate. But in the case of X1 Pro LensHook, it is completely automated. So once you put the drop, pretty much it's all go. There is really nothing that you have to do until you see the results flashing on the screen. Again, so in a traditional CASA, you have to take the image, you have to adjust the image, then it has you have to double check before the report. But in the case of X1 Pro, it is completely automated. So in terms of the technology roadmap, the device of LensHook is currently at the stage of machine learning. It has really, I think, will require massive amount of data to get to the next stage, which will be deep learning. So that I think will provide it the accuracy, which will be unsurpassed. So it is on that trajectory. Has it reached there? No, it has not. But it is definitely at a stage where it is being really very useful because of the machine learning technology that it is using. So let's look at the features. Just to summarize everything, you may be feeling a little bit confused with all the data and all the information that I had put together. So I tried to summarize things to bring out what are the unique features of Lenso. The unique features, easy to use, no training required. Essentially, if I tell Dr. Rupin, I know you are a hotshot microsurgeon. I want you to come here and do this semen analysis. I bet he will be able to do as good of a semen analysis using the Lenso as myself or somebody who's working here in the laboratory for the last 30 years. Absolutely true. Space required, 1/10 of a regular CASA. So here, I mean, you really require a small space. Space is the premium. That is money. So you can save that money. Analysis time, less than 5 minutes. Again, a huge expense for the laboratory. If you look at incrementally, if you're using 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour to do a semen analysis, and the same thing can be done in 5 minutes, that's a huge saving on any given day and over a given month and a given year. And if you multiply by the number of tests that you do, the savings can be calculated. Accuracy. There is really, I mean, huge amount of range from less than 100,000 to 300 million. That's amazing. pH combined with the semen analysis. So you don't have to take a drop and put a pH paper and check for the pH. It is all done at the time of semen analysis. Morphology, no fixation, staining, nothing. No messing around. Inter-intra observer, very high, 99%. We just saw the results. Availability of results, real-time access from lab to physician. I'll tell you, if nothing, you will like this. And why you will like it, I'll tell you, because when the patients are coming with their wives and seeing you, they are very agitated. The wives are, all anxious and all really twisted and worried as to what is going on with this man and what kind of a sperm he has, whether I can really have a baby, whether I need, he needs to go and have a surgery, whether I need to go and have an IVF. There's so many questions. And what happens when you go in a traditional lab? Well, you give the sample, bye-bye. The results will be told after a week or after 3 days or after 5 days. And somebody will, have to call or send the results. Patient are calling, the wives are calling, which is really not just in India, but in our lab too. Here, while the patient has collected the sample, you will examine in 5 minutes while the patient is waiting there, has just come out and is still, the wife is sitting in the doctor's office. The results are there. It by Bluetooth, it will come on your phone, it will come on your iPad, it will come on your laptop, and you can talk to the patient and give them the results. How sweet it is. I mean, that I think is the most important thing in my view, that you can really give the information right then and there, help them listen. Now we know exactly what you have to do. I have the results of semen analysis, and now I know exactly what I need to do, whether you are oligospermic, whether you're teratospermic, whether you need to go for IVF, whether you need to go ICSI, you need to go for varicocelectomy or whatever. So there is no suspense, there is no tension, there is no frustration, there is no delay. Well, I mean, this is the paper we just published. And this, the data that I was showing is just being published. It's out there. Anybody can Google. And this is open access. So you don't have to, pay for the paper like many of the journals are charging, which is really crazy these days. This is completely free. So you can download and read everything about this study that we have conducted at Cleveland Clinic. So towards my end of my presentation, I just wanted to tell you, on the top is the human evolution, how we have evolved over the hundreds of years, how human species have evolved. And on the bottom, you will see the evolution of the computers. When I left India in 1984, I didn't have any computer. I went to Harvard Medical School. I ended from a small place like Banaras. I mean, it's not a small place in terms of the population. But in terms of the development, Banaras was like a backwater at that time. I ended up in Boston at Harvard, and in real Harvard Medical School building, and my professor gave me a desk, and I had a computer. I'm looking at computer. I was so happy. I never had a computer, and what you see here in 1985 is really the type of computer that I have, and it was just amazing. But when you look at it, there was a huge computer with huge monitor. It was like a monster of a computer. I mean, as you reflect back, and the technology kept on changing. We had so many changes right in the last 30 years, right in front of our eyes, that have happened. And what you heard from the talk by Sunil, I mean, with the technology moving and the amount of power and the memory and the data that Facebook has, I mean, I forgot the unit that he told, can power 300 million computers. I mean, it's just crazy. And the things keep on getting smaller and smaller. You look at the iPhone, which probably would be equivalent to like a supercomputer of when the supercomputers came. And we have that device in our hand, and it can do multiple things. So the secret of change, according to Socrates, one of great philosopher of our old time, is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And then look at Charles Darwin. It is not the strongest of the species that survive, not the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. So, friends, it is important that we really learn about this technology. We want you to be open. I was not open. I had to struggle. I'm still learning. If you look at the stories from Gulliver's Travel by Jonathan Swift, I mean, as a child, we read it. And there is a character called Brobdingnag. I mean, this is the story that man who's lying down, and all these little creatures, those are called Lilliputians. And they overcame this huge monster of a man, which were the race called Brobdingnag. So Lilliputian and Lenshook are similar. I think what we are seeing here is an evolution right in our lifetime. What we are seeing, so many changes are happening. We are seeing the drones, we are seeing the flying cars. The technology is just amazing. And I think it has to be learned. It is for our use, for our advantage. And if we can make use of it, I think it will provide us fantastic results, which will be very accurate, very precise. It will overcome the weaknesses of our current system, which is what we are talking about in andrology, and affecting millions of patients around the world. So I believe that the technology which is at our doorstep is something to think, something to keep our minds and eyes open and learn about it. Everyone has to make their own decision as to what they would like to do. But for us, I think the choice was very clear. We plan to introduce this technology for our clinical laboratories, and all these big CASA machines that we have probably will go into storage or be donated. And the biggest issue that we didn't talk about is the recurring expense. I mean, those machines, the large CASA devices that we have, there is a huge recurring expense. There is a maintenance that you have to do to make sure those devices work properly year after year, and have to sign very expensive service agreement with the companies. I mean, some of them can be $5,000 to $6,000 per year, just in terms of maintenance and support, and making sure if the device go bonkers, then they will replace and send you another machine. So those expenses are humongous. Those expenses are humongous. And we need to look at how we can provide cost saving, inexpensive care to our patients. Not only that, how we can provide most accurate, most precise results, which are the foundation of the clinical management of patient, which Rupin is going to talk about. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to all of you. Thank you.
Could I introduce Dr. Rupin, please? Because I need to get this privilege of introducing Dr. Rupin.
Sure, sir.
एक हिंदी में बड़ा खूबसूरत सा शेर है जो बोलना चाहूंगा, और वो है कि हिंदी में बड़ा खूबसूरत सा, उर्दू का एक्चुअली बड़ा खूबसूरत शेर है कि ये किसी तारीफ के मोहताज नहीं, कभी किसी फूल पे इत्र लगाया जाता है क्या. तो वेल, Dr. Rupin, it has really been a privilege of knowing you. And I remember the first time I came to know about you when I was reading Love and Bailey. And I felt very proud that an Indian had developed the first prosthesis malleable as a penile implant. But anyway, from that day till now, having known you, I have realized a few things. That apart from being a fantastic orator, a great clinician, you're an amazing human being. So it's been a privilege, really, sir. And I'll introduce you. Dr. Rupin is a consultant andrologist and microsurgeon at Leelavati Hospital and Research Center, Mumbai. He specializes in microsurgery for male infertility, sperm retrieval in azoospermia, penile prosthesis implantation. He is the founder president of South Asian Society for Sexual Medicine. He's published and presented over 100 papers and 26 book chapters. He's the associate editor of Fertility and Reproduction. He's had multiple awards, including the prestigious Urology President Gold Medal, and of course, the most prestigious BC Roy Award. Dr. Rupin Shah, over to you, sir, the stage.
Thank you very much, Sunil. And it's always been my pleasure meeting you at so many meetings. I enjoyed the little monthly newsletter that you published and sent me over so many years. And every time we've met, we've had wonderful stories to share. So it's always been a pleasure. And of course, Ashok over the years has grown to a very close friend. We've met in Ranchi and international meetings and national meetings and Zoom meetings and collaboration. So it's a true privilege to be here in this symposium with two dear friends on a topic on which actually I know very little. Sunil did a wonderful job introducing artificial intelligence, and Ashok has presented what I'm now going to call as the David and Goliath story of semen analysis. Because when we talk of semen analysis, we often think of the giant machines that he spoke about. And as he pointed out rightly, huge machines, very expensive, labor saving, but labor intensive. And now suddenly comes this small little machine. It seems almost too good to be true, doesn't occupy space, costs much less, doesn't take time, and is as accurate or even better than the Goliaths that it is slaying. So today's talk has been an introduction to a very fascinating application of artificial intelligence. And when I asked Ashok that what is it that sets this apart, he said that the intelligence is built into the entire system, into the optics, into the acquisition of data, into the analysis. So very briefly, this is just a quick 5-minute review because I'm sure everyone is now tired. Very briefly, where do we see artificial intelligence progressing in the field of andrology and specifically male infertility? First, of course, as we saw in the evaluation of the semen, and we say, okay, let's do the basic, simple semen analysis. And as Ashok pointed out so clearly, semen analysis is neither basic nor simple. It's a highly complex, difficult test. And while in the US, the labs that do semen analysis are highly regulated, in India, every lab does it. And usually it's the junior most technician who is told to look at the semen. And as a result, the semen analysis report that the clinician works with is often highly unreliable and very variable. And a lot of the so-called benefit or lack of benefit that the clinician encounters as they treat male infertility is more due to the change in the technician rather than anything else. In that scenario, something like what we've heard about today, a very simple lens hook X-Pro system, which could very quickly, very reliably, very reproducibly give us a good, accurate semen analysis, that would be critical. We have to look at the running costs, and if those are within reasonable rates, I think it would be a very, very useful tool. The next application would be, of course, the other aspects of semen analysis, not just the basic semen analysis, but the more detailed sperm function tests. So, for example, when we look at sperm DNA fragmentation, a lot of the labs in India use the halo sperm method, where a subjective evaluation of the halo will decide the level of DNA fragmentation. And this is, in fact, one of the quoted disadvantages of the halo sperm, that it is a subjective interpretation. And like this, whether it is the stain of a dye, the shade of a stain, all those are amenable to a far more accurate interpretation once artificial intelligence is incorporated within the microscope that looks at these samples. The next big area where I think artificial intelligence will play a major role is in the genetic evaluation of male infertility. In fact, the main change that we're going to see over the next few years is our greater and greater understanding and identification of the genetic causes of the fertility problems that we see in men. Ashok in his wonderful slide highlighted the environmental influences, and that we are becoming aware of, and our ability to identify and perhaps prevent these will improve. Lifestyle factors, of course, we always highlight, but genetics are going to be the key. And there are a number of defects that we need to look at. And particularly when we come to single gene defects, we are at present often at a loss. There are more than 2,000 genes that are at work in the testes. We have more than 200 specific conditions where infertility is associated with a single gene or a multiple gene defect. And yet, currently, the only routinely done genetic test is a karyotype and a YQ microdeletion. Because these individual single gene defects are too infrequent, their phenotypic expression is still unclear, and identifying many of them is still very difficult. In fact, just to give you an example, these are a whole set of genes, the HOOK1, the PSERG, the LRG-UK1, all of which control different aspects of sperm motility. So every day in the clinic, we'll see men with astheno, and we give them empirical antioxidants. But in many of these cases, it could be one of these gene defects which we need to identify. Or take something like hypogonadotropic hypogonadism. All of us know, okay, Calvin syndrome. But in addition to the Calvin gene, if you look at this diagram, you'll see a whole range of genetic defects leading to defects at various levels, GnRH secretion, GnRH action, the gonadal action, and each of these genes could be responsible for the hypogonadotropic hypogonadism and may affect the outcome. And therefore, it becomes very important to have a sophisticated system of artificial intelligence that, combining with microchip technology and other newer methods of full genome assessment, will help us identify for a given male which is the single or multiple genetic defects resulting in the infertility. The last two diagrams that I showed you are from this really wonderful book, of which Ashok is one of the editors, together with his long-term collaborators. And those of you who are really interested in this subject, I would strongly recommend this book. It's a beautiful exposition of the subject. And of course, the last area, which will be the next frontier where artificial intelligence will play a major role, is integrating everything, the genetic data, the epigenetic data, the proteomic data, the data from other biometric testing, from other biochemical testing, to identify a specific problem. Now, let me just give a clinical example. This is an abstract from last year's ESHRE meeting, 2020. dealing with globozoospermia. We all know globozoospermia as an acrosome-less sperm, and we know that we should be doing ICSI for this sperm. But in this particular study, when the problem was assessed critically, and by critically they did electron microscopy to look at the actual structural defect, they looked at the protein content, the sperm fragmentation, the cytosolic factor, the genetic makeup, and they found a variety, if you look at the last line, of genetic alterations. But very interestingly, they found that some of the patients had a deficiency of PLC zeta, phospholipase C zeta, and some did not. And how did that impact the outcome? In the 7 couples where the PLC zeta was present, there was good fertilization and a good clinical pregnancy rate. In those men with globozoospermia where the PLC zeta was absent, there was fertilization but no implantation. Once the diagnosis was made that they have no PLC zeta is responsible for the calcium ion fluctuations, and therefore there will not be activation of the oocyte. Once artificial gamete treatment was done to activate the gamete, then fertilization rate was higher, implantation rate was better, and there was a 1 in 3 live birth rate. So this is just one example of the complexity which is going to represent the next level of care in male infertility. And when you have many, many such conditions, we will need artificial intelligence-based algorithms to negotiate through the whole range of conditions and the whole range of investigations that we would need to do for a given individual. So to conclude then, artificial intelligence will get incorporated increasingly in the evaluation of male fertility potential. It will improve the accuracy and the speed, as we saw in the lens hook. It will facilitate our ability to look at the full genome and identify genetic defects which are causing the infertility. And finally, it will help us make complex decisions where everything is incorporated: the clinical finding, the standard lab test, the sophisticated lab tests, the genomic data, the proteomic studies, and all the other additional data that we will need to really pinpoint our therapy. So if I were to summarize this, I found the summary in yesterday's Bombay Times, and this is what their caption was: don't keep evolution waiting. We need to break through. So the bottom line message would be, clinicians, be on the alert. You have to incorporate artificial intelligence at various levels, as Sunil pointed out, whether it's evaluation of the egg or the sperm or the embryo or the endometrium, artificial intelligence will play a major role. And those of you who are researchers, my strong message would be, open your labs to the computer scientists, let them bring in their algorithms, their artificial intelligence machines, so that the way in which your lab research translates into practical clinical applications will be made far more sophisticated. So with this, I thank you once again for inviting me to be part of this wonderful meeting. And I think now we are open to questions.
Dr. Rupin, this was a fantastic lecture, and looking into the future from the point of view of the machine, and looking into the future from the point of view of andrology per se as a whole. And that's been really beautiful. There are a lot of questions which have come, and these questions pertain to artificial intelligence, semen analysis, morphology, also about the machine. So I'll just go through the questions, and we'd like to discuss these questions. So the first question is, Dr. Agarwal, this question would probably go to you, that is this going to be the next breakthrough in semen analysis? How does it judge the morphology? Is it by Kruger criteria? And what is the scientific method by which it judges the morphology?
Thank you very much, Sunil, and thank you, Dr. Rupin. A great presentation, as always, and you really put the information so nicely. I'm very, very pleased with your summary of where we are going. So thank you for your insight. Um, so first part of Sunil is, what do we think about this technology? I mean, I think um, for any technology, I think beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. So as long as you are keeping your eyes open and are looking at the data and looking at the proof and reading the literature, you will be able to make the right decision. Our job is to really share the information, both from a research and scientific point of view, but also explain clinically. So the data that I had provided really speaks for itself. Um, I believe that this is the way where the technology is going to move into the andrology area, which is really one of the biggest weakness in our entire care of reproduction for infertile couple. This is the biggest, weakest link in everything that we do. The foundation of their care is dependent on a decision made by the lowest qualified, I should not be saying that, or people who are not really well trained, who are not given the proper training. And this is the most neglected test, which really is dictating a lot of decisions that are being made clinically for these couples, unfortunately. So if we can um, improve the results accuracy and prediction of this particular test, which is essential for millions of couples around the world, I think we are making a difference. So is this the device which is going to do it? Well, it looks promising. There may be more devices that will come into the play. Will this be the only model that will stay in the market? I mean, I think the time will tell. I think there will be more developments and more advancement and fine tuning of the software and the algorithm. So this is certainly at this time looking very promising. In terms of your second question about the morphology, the way that the morphology is read, it takes a very high resolution photo of the sample and then measures the shape and size from head to tail using the fifth edition strict criteria. After that, it will decide if the sperm is normal or abnormal, and then get the normal ratio by the formula, which is number of normal sperm morphology divided by the number of total sperm count. It counts all the sperm within one field. The device, if it has more sperm concentration, then it will count more sperm. If it has low sperm count, then it will count low. So the why it is not very accurate for abnormal semen sample is because it has not been trained adequately at this time. So it has been examined mostly in samples which have more normal sperm form, and that's why it was able to predict those samples with large number of normal sperm form or above the cutoff of 4% much more accurately than below 4%. So there is work to be done for the morphology. There is no staining, there is no preparation, there is nothing. The single semen, I mean, there are 2 drops that has to be put onto the slide counting device on the which is one for the pH and one is for looking at concentration, motility, morphology, and everything else. So there is no staining. It is all done in real time, and you get the results. So the loading cassette, when you insert, will provide the entire results.
One question which everybody is, there are a lot of questions which are common. And one of the questions is, how often does this machine need to be calibrated? Do I need to calibrate it, or can I self-calibrate it, or somebody from the company will calibrate it? Should it be calibrated in case I move the machine from one place to another?
Good question. I think there is really no need to calibrate the machine. The machine is calibrated by the company when they will, when somebody decides to either do the testing or want to use it in the clinical practice. and there is no further calibration required for this device. So absolutely no calibration. What we do, what I explained is the daily quality control, which is based on the usage. If you are doing semen analysis once every week, then you don't have to do the quality control every single day. But if you're doing every single day, which most of the busy clinics will be doing, then you have to do the quality control. And there are three different forms of quality control. One to test the hardware, software, and then actual beads, which will tell whether you have the correct results for high concentration sample or low concentration sample. And in our experience, using it now for more than 2 years, we have been doing the quality control. We have found that the device is very, very accurate when used with the quality control.
There's a question which is, do we have to dilute it in viscous samples? What is the criteria for oligospermia and polyzoospermia in a condition where it is viscous or the sperm count is low or high? How does this machine react?
So, I mean, there are multiple questions here, but if I can remember all of them, I need artificial intelligence here. But I think the first question that Sunil asked is the problem of viscosity, which is quite common that we see samples which are viscous and sometimes highly viscous, that it is very difficult to really use those samples. So in those conditions, use the WHO recommended recommendation to keep the sample in a warm water bath for 10-20 minutes to allow it to liquefy. If you don't want to do that, then there are a protease enzyme trypsin, which is available now commercially by many companies. Then you can just add pre-weighed amount of that, and within 2-3 minutes, the sample will liquefy. And we use that quite often in our lab. It has been using it for many, many years. So that really will help make the sample pretty much liquefied and suitable for analysis. Second is there much that you have to do for sample which are asthenozoospermic or oligozoospermic? Not really, because the range or the according to the specificity of this instrument, it could examine the same concentration from 0.1 million to 300 million. And it can also check motility from 1% to 100% with a very high degree of accuracy for concentration, almost 100%, and for motility, almost 97 or 98%. So you can actually determine the asthenozoospermia and oligozoospermic sample. But if it is severely oligozoospermic, when it is, say, let's say like 3 or 4 or 5 million sperm, then we will recommend that you should double check by using the manual semen analysis. And the limitation is that the device can only examine 100 grids and within one field. It is not moving. The technology is not where the chamber is moving and it is looking at multiple fields. So if there are no sperm inside this field, but there are sperm in other field, the answer will be different. So I think we strongly recommend in really severely oligospermic sample that you should use manual examination. But the severely oligospermic sample incidence is fairly small. So it is not every time that you will have to really do a manual analysis with the examination on the lens hook.
Dr. Rupin, a question for you. Will in the future artificial intelligence bring us to a stage that we could know which sperms are genetically normal and which are genetically abnormal?
Probably not, because to know whether a sperm is genetically normal, you'd have to stain it in some way, and we may not be able to select and therefore use that sperm. But possibly peripheral measurements where the sperm vitality is preserved may give us a clue as to which sperm is more likely to be normal.
Right. And the second question is, in artificial intelligence, based on the sperm count And based on other history parameters, would we be able to know that there are chances of genetic problems based on this, not the semen analysis alone? On history, while putting at everything into the computer, will artificial intelligence in the future be able to predict this?
Again, partially yes, because there'll be some variables that are predictors of possible or greater genetic defects. We know paternal age is a very simple, obvious one, but there'll be many others. At the same time, we can never definitely predict by history or examination alone what will be the de novo risk to an individual.
Great. There is one question from for Dr. Agarwal, and the question is, though you have answered it in the in your lecture, but still people want to know what is the correlation of this with the macular chamber?
That's a good question. I mean, macular, we have not used the macular. We stopped using macular for a very long time. Sorry, Mr. Macular. Just because we found that it is a very unstable counting chamber, and you scratch and damage that chamber very commonly and very easily. And we destroyed dozens of these chambers, which are very expensive and supposed to last forever. And slowly we had like a whole collection of these chambers. Sometimes their cover slip is not working. Sometimes the base is scratched up. And we just, and then there's studies which started coming out of the disposable counting chamber, and that was the end of macular counting chamber in most of the United States. Because the disposable counting devices are much more safer, and they are very economical in terms of the cost. Here in the United States, this cost maybe $1 or something per semen analysis. So it was an easy decision. But for our study that we conducted and published, we used the LEHA slide to do the validation. And our results are with LEHA. The macular is certainly not very precise because of the gap between the cover slip and the slide, and that really causes the problem. It is a reusable counting chamber, so it means that over the time that gap will increase, and there is no way that you can really do anything. So we don't think, personally, this is my opinion, is that macular is a reliable counting device. For a long time people have used. We have used it for a long time. I spent a lot of money on that, but I think if you look at WHO, they recommend actually Newbar counting device or counting chamber as the gold standard. Outside of that, there are numerous studies which have used disposable counting chambers with 2 cover slips as a very good alternative for those who can afford it.
Yeah, Dr. Agarwal, there are 2 questions, and probably the last questions which are very pertinent. The first question is, how can we standardize laboratories, which actually you need a full lecture for probably?
Well, I think how can you standardize the laboratories? We have, I can only speak about the United States. I don't know much about, I mean, I traveled to India, but I think I'm not familiar with a lot of things that go on in the laboratories, never spent so much time. I can say that in the United States, the things are highly regulated. And we have to follow the regulatory guidelines for either IVF or fertility labs, andrology labs come under it. So for every single procedure that we conduct, there are standardized guidelines or checklists that you have to follow. And not only for the laboratory procedures that are pertaining to the andrology, but then we have a whole lot of guidelines for general laboratory conditions. Then we have a whole lot of guidelines for safety. Then a guideline for personnel, even guidelines for the people who are working, even for myself as a director or supervisors who are working. So as I said earlier, we are currently preparing for our inspection, which is due in our Cleveland Clinic main laboratory. And we have been spending days and days and months in terms of preparing. When we have done this 28 times successfully, still there are changes that are happening. You have to look at every single thing that is going on in your laboratory, every single report, every single procedure, every single standard operating procedure, all the different quality control, quality assurance, external proficiency testing, and everything has to be done correctly, and not only by one person but by multiple people who are working there, and everything has to be documented very correctly. So it is a process. I don't think you can just switch the light and say, well, I want to do it and I want to get it standardized, and you will have it next day. It's a process. You have to educate, you have to train, you have to have an overall system where either through the government or through voluntary or organization or the societies that are ISAR and IFS and so many other wonderful societies, which can provide that framework. And I do think there are some framework already existing in
Right.
India.
And answer the last question is, you use this in your laboratory. Will in the future you always check with manual, or can it be a system where ultimately only this will be used?
Well, we are not using manual. So that we have stopped. We are using it for a variety of functions already. And as I said, until unless there is a severely oligospermic sample, it makes no sense to develop the work when we have shown that there are such a precise correlation between the results of the manual and a very highly trained manual person and the results from the machine over and over again. I think if somebody is crazy, they can keep on doing it and wasting their time. But when we have the evidence in our hands, which is something which has been peer reviewed and published, I don't see a need for doing it. Of course, with the introduction of any technology, everyone has to feel comfortable and they need to do it in their own way. They don't need to trust my work or the work that is done at Cleveland Clinic. They need to do it and feel comfortable and do a trial and see how it works for them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Agarwal, and thank you very much, Dr. Rupin, for the amazing, I would say, interaction over here of all the questions. And I think all the questions have been answered. I've tried to summarize and bring them all together. And now I'll hand over the microphone, in fact, the stage to Mr. Siddharth Daftri for rounding up this beautiful session.
Thank you, Sunil.
Thank you, Dr. Jindal. I mean, it's been a very fascinating webinar. A big thank you to our international speaker, Dr. Ashok Agarwal. Thank you, Dr. Rupin Shah. Thank you, Dr. Jindal. I mean, the best part of today's webinar is that, we have not just discussed the problems in the male infertility, but today, I think, we are going back with a solution for the better diagnosis. So definitely, I'm seeing the excitement already with a lot of queries coming in, a lot of emails already popping us, what is the price of the machine? When can I get a free demo and all? So it's been a fantastic session. I would like to express my gratitude to all of you for your cooperation, which has enabled to us to conduct a highly fruitful webinar. Also, I would definitely like to thank the Bondre Bio team who has made a fantastic machine helping us to solve the problem of the diagnosis. I would also like to thank the organizing committee for arranging this webinar and ensuring that most of the topics related to AI and semen testing are covered. I'm sure people that you are excited to have the feel of the automatic semen analyzer, and you would like to have a demo. So that's why you can get in touch with Mrs. Santoshi Kadam. She has already put her contact details, and she would be the right person for the demo and live testing. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Over to Santoshi for the last part. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rupin, Dr. Ashok Agrawal, and Dr. Sunil Jindal for sharing your vast experience and thoughts tonight, I mean, today evening. Thank you so much, audience, for joining us. Thank you, Medisage, for giving the technical support. For all the attendees, the hyperlink to download the free ebook titled Strategies to Ameliorate the Oxidative Stress in Assisted Reproduction by Dr. Ashok Agrawal. It would be sent to your registered emails within just 1 week after this, from today. And again, for free demonstrations and live testings, do contact us and we would be really happy to serve you. And thank you so much and wishing you a great evening.